The remedy. The remedy. What's underneath the situation you don't realize? So let's examine with a critical eye. Put on your glasses and let it magnify the truth that lies hidden under all those lies. Cause everybody has nobility, and if you look beyond what your eyes can see, you'll see they're just like you and me, and now we're giving you the remedy. Welcome to the Remedy Podcast. This podcast is a project of WEBB Squared, a North Carolina nonprofit that works to increase wealth for Black businesses through connection, network, and opportunity. Our host is Stephanie Terry, the Executive Director of WEBB Squared, and our co-hosts are Associate Director Rinnie and myself, Mashallah Salaam. I am the Media and Production Specialist. In this podcast, we hope to bring consciousness to the racial divide and speak on emerging new narratives about race. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you will enjoy the podcast.
Good morning, Stephanie, Mashallah, and special guest Travis Patterson. How are you all doing today?
Doing great.
Great.
It's podcast Wednesday. We just came off of a Juneteenth. Mashallah, how are you?
I'm doing good today.
You know, Juneteenth is a brand new holiday. I mean, I know that people have been celebrating it for a really long time. It's a brand new national holiday. Did everybody have a good time this weekend? And, tell us about your Juneteenth activities.
I had a great first Juneteenth. I had a great time. It was, for me, kind of Friday and Saturday was Juneteenth. And even though Sunday was actually Juneteenth, it was also Father's Day. So it was kind of this, combination of two great holidays that I felt very proud to have been part of, and also to be celebrated a little bit. That felt good.
Nice. Yeah. Travis, I hope Juneteenth and Father's Day, that doesn't happen often, because I was pulled in different directions, and I was like, wow, when does this happen? But Juneteenth was fantastic. We celebrated at the African American owned fairgrounds with CORE, and then we had our pop-up, and it was lots and lots of fun. We played games, we danced, we learned, we greeted friends. So it was all good. I'm glad it's over though.
Well, you were like dancing pretty hard out there. You were on for like 3 hours, walking around with your microphone, introducing all the guests at the fairgrounds, dancing pretty hard. So yeah, you were working.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Mashallah, what did you do on Juneteenth?
My brother actually had a wedding.
Hey.
Yeah, I went to his wedding. It was very small. It was just like immediate family. He had caterers and set up a tent in his backyard. It was really nice, the setup.
Oh, awesome. So everybody had a good weekend. Yeah, I'm still needing to recuperate. I'm at the age where I need if I do more than one thing a day or back-to-back activities, then I need a vacation from that before I get back to work. In a perfect world.
So Stephanie, you've known Travis a lot longer than I have. I've been working with him for the last few months when we started the WEBB Squared program year, and it's been really great to talk with Travis. We haven't talked as much as I thought we would because Travis was running for office in Chatham County, and he got really, really super busy for a while. But do you want to say some words about Travis and how you know him?
I do. I remember, Travis, we were sitting together after an REI. Do you remember that? And I think we were at Pittsburgh Presbyterian Church. And I was like, who is this sharp, intelligent young man that just had your analysis around like race relations and community was just so brilliant. And I was like, man, who are you? And I immediately wanted to know you. And for some reason, I don't know if we exchanged numbers or not, but I remember forgetting like to get your contact information. And then as we like life moves on. And then we came back into contact again. Was it with Core, or was it when I was doing organizing with meat processing plant? I think that's what it was, right?
It was me organizing, through
Yeah.
Mr. Thompson, Reverend Dr. Reverend.
Yep. So welcome, Travis. Welcome to our podcast called The Remedy. And, now you're one of our entrepreneurs. You ran for office, and you didn't make it through this time, but no doubt about it that you are on the road to being the leader that you are. So tell us about your business. Tell us about what was running for office like. Yeah, just kind of share with us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, I do remember taking the REI training. I'll preface this by saying that time was a very difficult time for me. I was executive director of a failing agency, not to my fault. It was already failing when I assumed the leadership titles. And so that training kind of helped open my eyes a little bit about what was really happening. I think that I just didn't see. I didn't know. So thank you for being my friend during that time. My business is called Self-Enhancing Education and Development Services, LLC. It's unofficially called Seeds, because we plant seeds, we water them, and we help them grow. The purpose of the business is to help families, typically at-risk families, transition from a place of trauma or tragedy to a place of improved self-sufficiency, hence the self-enhancing education and development services. That's what we do. It started, I don't know where to start. I'm probably going to jump around a little bit because it's all interconnected, but the timelines they're all over the place. When I met you, Stephanie, I was the executive director of Family Violence and Rape Crisis Services, which was the domestic violence and sexual assault service provider for Chatham County. I had been there. I worked there total for about 3 years. Just a little fun fact: my mom worked there when I was a kid, so I was very aware of the services and what they did there. And then as an adult, I went and worked there. As I've been working for about 16 years now at Family Visitation Services of Chatham County. At the Visitation Center, we provide court-ordered services for families who have been affected by intimate partner violence. Essentially, a supervised visitation. For example, a mom and a dad have children together. Something happened between mom and dad that caused them to separate or be afraid of each other or one of the other. And they need a safe place to visit their children and be monitored. Their interactions are monitored. So I've been doing that for about 16 years. In 2010 or 2011, I got a phone call, very random phone call at the center, just happened to be there. And it was an attorney from one of our neighboring counties who wanted more information about supervised visitation, but had a client that didn't want to come to a center based and be monitored in a center. So what they really wanted was someone to go off-site with them to monitor their interactions so as to promote normalcy. They wanted to go to their house or go to the mall or go to the movies or go to dinner, things like that, go to the park. And so I agreed to do it. And this was the birth of my business.
Wow.
So I started with one client and grew to have several working relationships with attorneys, which led to working relationships with mediators, parenting coordinators, therapists, and I started getting referrals. For a few years, I just operated as me. I would just go out here and there. It wasn't really anything consistent. But then the referrals started rolling in, the relationships started building. And so I incorporated and built my business around it. One thing that's always been important to me is youth services. Helping families also get from one place to another. Again, like those families that are in transition, youth that are at risk, that need a little bit more support in being successful adults. And so I expanded my business to include some skill building for at-risk youth. So now not only is I call it a wraparound model. And so I started as a simple supervised visitation service, but I saw very quickly that there was a higher need for support for a lot of these families. The kids were oftentimes traumatized. The adults were oftentimes traumatized. there were so many different things happening. And so I expanded my business to address some of what I could, which was trying to help the youth build leadership skills to be successful adults coming from a place of being at risk. And so I started with the funny story. I started a summer camp for young Black men, young Black boys.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for about 2 weeks. It was super successful, so successful that I had parents and other community members asking me, what about the rest of us? We want to join too. What are you going to do for us? And so I ended up having to, I actually started with the sisters. And so I expanded to include, all genders. And then
Your summer camp, what did you do? What did y'all do? Like, how do you start just a summer camp?
We did skill building. We did, communication skills. We did emotional awareness. We did turning conflict into collaboration. We did financial literacy. We did a lot of other things, healthy relationships. We did gender norms. I used to teach a healthy masculinity course. So we did some work towards healthy masculinity and, debunking the toxic masculinity myths. So it's really, really powerful work. And then, like I said, I expanded to include all genders. That grew from, I think I started with about 12 young men of color. And then I had 20 something young people of color. And then it grew from there and I expanded some more. So I opened the doors up even wider. And then before I knew it, I had 2-3 different functioning groups. Unfortunately, COVID came. We did try to do it virtually. We shifted our model a bit to kind of a 3-pronged approach to wellness. This was emotional, physical, and spiritual wellness. And so we did that for the summer of 20, whatever year the pandemic hit. I forget these days, it's been so long. We did Zumba, for physical activity. We always had kind of a spiritual component to it. And then we did some education during these groups. I worked in collaboration or partnership with communities and schools where I now work full time and work with their at-risk youth populations there, along with some of my own referrals.
Beautiful.
Wow, Travis, that's just,
yeah.
I'm just listening to all the things that you've done and I'm just like, I've been talking with you for like 6 months and now I'm just like getting a bigger picture and you're so humble about everything,
I enjoy the work. Not so much the credit.
It's funny how we you said March, the pandemic kind of, actually the pandemic kind of swirled us together because this is how WEBB Squared was born during the pandemic. And your work is so similar to the work that we do at WEBB Squared. And I love that you have a focus on like emotional and mental well-being, that emotional intelligence, because as you know, in WEBB Squared, we do like lots of focus on our mindsets and developing that powerful entrepreneurial mind and the leadership skills that go with it. So, but the fact that you're working with youth is just so needed, especially here in our rural counties. So your work is, the overlap is so significant that we've decided that we'll be working together. Not only will Travis be, we were supporting him and starting his business, but he will become an extension and join on as an arm of WEBB Squared to really address workforce development. So that is just like amazing that out of crisis, because we were kind of like the whole world was in a crisis, that we birthed all of these new collaborations and opportunities to support people. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment on the work because I was just thinking the other day about how, a lot of the times, and especially in our community where toxic masculinity is really perpetuated, especially in our media. And I think that is so important that you address those things. And so hearing that was really nice.
It's important work. And I was really surprised at how under the radar it is. It's almost so normal that people don't typically think that they're, you know, that toxic masculinity really is a thing. It's I mean, you see it's everywhere around us, you know, sex, drugs, money, all over TV, all in the music. And we have to break this cycle. I mean, we have to. There's no other way around it.
Mhm. Yeah, those things are, you know, they dehumanize us in so many ways. And I always, you know, I think about, we talk about race, you know, our work is about, the remedy is part of like just having really conscious conversations about curing racism, you know, addressing it, acknowledging it, and then like, you know, what are some ways in which we can begin to fix it and dissolve it, you know. And one of them most definitely is just like, racism is just so dehumanizing in so many ways. And when I think about Black men and men of color, how just difficult it has been to be in the world when you're viewed as such a threat and feared, and how difficult it must be to not internalize that. If that's the thing, I'm not a man. Am I assuming? Or what do you think about that, Travis?
I think you're spot on. I think there's a lot that kind of goes on, you know, in our own cultures and in our subcultures, specifically with Black men. You know, I mean, as a you guys see me, I'm very light skinned, and even growing up, you know, I don't think I experienced as much racism as I did from other cultures as I did from my own. And so just having to, you know, figure out how to navigate that, but also do it in a way that's healthy and not sell myself to something that wasn't me. And I did spend a lot of years trying to figure that out, and ended up in some places I never should have been, you know, just trying to prove myself, trying to prove my Blackness, I think. And so now as an adult, I think it's really important to share those stories so that our young people, specifically our young men of color, don't follow in those same footsteps and can be comfortable being themselves without having to feel like, you know, they have to fit in or you have to prove your Blackness to anybody. You know, that's so it's real. It was real for me growing up.
I'm glad you said that, because I know, you know, my grandmother, on my mom's side, my grandmother is from Goldsboro, North Carolina, and her mom is Black and her father was white. But it's not like she grew up with her father. You know, he was, you know, this is what went on. And she used to tell me how painful it was because she was so light skinned. Like, so she was rejected by white people and rejected by Black people, you know, her people. And she said, being rejected by your own people hurts the worst. And, you know, when we think about racism, that is just like that internalized oppression that we learned from living in a white supremacy society is just so destructive. And what it teaches us when we internalize it is that people of color, we have no value, you know, and we learn how to other. And so I'm glad you brought that up. And it's about time that we start talking about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned, oh, sorry, were you going to say something after?
No, I was just gonna say I don't have I'm not white. I'm not mixed with white. I have so we are Okanichi, Saponi, and Black, but it looks, you know, I mean, my family's light skin. We have good hair. It's good hair, quote unquote, as it was called growing up. You know, I think things are defined a lot by society. I have different hair. I wouldn't call it good or better than anyone else's hair. It's just a different type of hair texture. You know, so it was always funny trying to, you know, like, hey, you know, I'm not mixed, not white. You know what I mean? I'm Black, and my people are of color over here too. They just are of lighter shade. So
you mentioned that there was a time in your life where you were trying to find yourself and figure out really who you are. And you mentioned that you got into some things that You weren't necessarily supposed to, but I want to know, like, what was the turning point that got you out of that box that, you know, society tries to put Black men in?
I think it was a process. It happened over time. There were a few key points along the way that kind of shifted my mental a bit. Probably not the right platform to talk about some of those things, but let's just say that I had a couple reality checks. Nobody is immune to the system, right? No matter what shade of brown you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what your socioeconomic background is, no matter how high your education is, no matter how many achievements you have or what jobs you've worked, if you play with fire, you will get burned. And I got burned a couple of times. Well, no, I wouldn't say a couple of times. There's just a few things happened along the way. And it really just opened my eyes to saying to myself, what's important to you? You know, is it important to you to prove yourself to this group of people that, you know, can't help you if you're in trouble? Or is it important to stay true to yourself and keep yourself out of trouble from the get-go, regardless of what people say, think, or feel about you? You know, you do your part, you pull your weight, you do it humbly, and you do it with righteous intent. And it's hard to go wrong with that. And so, you know, I decided to make changes in my life. I committed myself to my spirituality. I trimmed some fat. I let go of some friends. I changed my circles, and I threw myself really into my work. And it's been 14 years now.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I'll tell you, you know, I am a firm believer that it's the pressure that makes the diamond. And, you know, if you, you know, the people that are so transformational and that I have like been blessed to know or to read about, they usually have gone through several identities, you know, where you don't start off with the identity that you don't wind up with the identity that you began with. Now I look at myself, Travis, you know, when I was graduating from high school, I like to say I was like really, really kind of dumb. I was just like, I was so fearful and I had anxiety and I was a people pleaser, like all the things. And it was a very painful but liberating process to be, I think I would just call it like a series of disappointments that began to emerge who I really am. You know, and these identities that we're socialized to be because of how we look, because of our complexion, because of, you know, the zip codes we grow up in, they're not easy to shake, you know, but it's so worth the shaking. Rinnie, you want to add?
Well, I was just going to ask, where does this idea of fearlessness come in? I mean, do you have to shake the identities that inform you in order to start being fearless? Because I think we've all gone through that period of time where we are just stupid, you know, and anxious and fearful. And I mean, I went through a big part of my life feeling that way. And, you know, and I don't feel that. I haven't felt that in like several months, you know, and it's been actually very freeing. And that's why we're doing this Fearless Friday and, you know, the podcast and everything. And so I'm just wondering, like, for you all, where's that point where you're like, okay, it doesn't matter anymore, and I can just start speaking my mind and being myself? Any thoughts?
Like I said, for me, I don't think I can identify one specific time or event that happened that, you know, that kind of woke me. It was a series of, I don't know, it happened. That's how it unfolded. But I'll say that I think being complacent is the opposite of being fearless, right? Like, it takes so much strength and courage to step outside of that box and do what's true to yourself, outside of people pleasing and outside of, you know, being conformed by society. I think being yourself and being out there and being true to yourself and, you know, and letting your light shine regardless of who may be blinded by it.
Yeah, those are true and good thoughts. And you know, when I think about that question, Rinnie, it's like, I think human beings, like, maybe I'm assuming this, but no, I don't think I am, is that we all want to belong. Like, we want to belong. And yet the groups that we want to belong to are usually so superficial, right? Like, we take for granted, well, you know, it's my family, so I need to belong. But you may, like, just totally, you know, be maybe you were born into your family not to belong, but to lead, right? Or to help transform. And you know, I was reading this book a while back, and it was about African indigenous, a culture in West Africa, and it was a indigenous community. And the culture had held a belief that every single person that is born come into a particular family, into a particular community or tribe, is bringing a gift from the other world. And that gift in them needs to be first accepted, that there's some gift here from the other side. And the community has to nourish this person. And then that person would get like a mentor, so that that gift, as it is being revealed, the person undergoing revealing the gift, it can be handled wisely. It was almost like what you do, Travis, like the youth skills. Say someone had the gift of being very intuitive, right? You know, they would need mentor from someone also who was very intuitive, so that they could understand, like, maybe if they were seeing visions, or, you know, how to manage that energy, and then be able to uniquely express it coming from their person. But whatever that gift was, whether it was someone that was a great singer, or someone that made cloth, or someone that was a very nurturing, that it was all pieces to help make the community more whole and more vibrant in its diversity. And I was just like, that is just like such an amazing definition of community that like I had never heard of, that's missing from like our Western social, you know, culture.
Yeah, can you imagine if we took children into our schools, and instead of like making them sit in rows and memorize mathematics and, you know, worksheets, if we really could tap into their hidden potential and talents and what gifts they're here to bring to the world, how that would transform our society, like our culture and our world, because we would be celebrating the achievements of our children and our, you know, within the community, like all the time. And I just think we would have such an amazing world if we could do that. I agree. Western culture, there's something that's not quite right about it, you know.
Yeah. Mashallah, you wanted to share your thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking about the importance of mentorship and how that's helped me throughout my life to really recognize my own talents and gifts, and having people who have achieved things in their life and who've learned life lessons and who are able to pass those down to me. It's been really helpful for me. I remember I joined a girls group when I was 14, and it was a leadership group, and it was like just really transforming and amazing for me to be a part of that. And I had many opportunities to be able to speak about important topics and have important discussions and speak in front of people at UNC when I was like a teenager, and that really inspired me. I actually ended up going there later in life. And also a question for Travis. I was wondering if you had any stories about mentors in your life. Since you are one now, I was wondering if you were inspired by anyone.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. Thank you. Actually, part of a huge reason why I got into the work was because there weren't very many mentors out there for me as a young Black man. I had a guy. His name was Mr. Alexander Graves. If you're from here, you know that name. If not, maybe look him up. He was a principal. He was an educator. He was a very prominent community member. He was a lot of things, but for me, he was just somebody I could look. Here's the funny thing: as a kid, oftentimes, at least for me, maybe personally, I didn't realize that people saw my potential and saw that I was going against it and tried to reel me back in, and I saw that as control. What I didn't realize at the time was that those people had my best interest at heart, and they loved me enough to try to keep me on track. And Mr. Graves was probably one of the first people to do that for me. And we bumped heads a little bit naturally. I was a rebellious teenager, but when I got older, after he was long gone from here, I realized what he was doing. He got me involved in youth groups. He took me and exposed me to HBCUs every summer. I went to Fayetteville State. I went to Elizabeth City, I think. We went to A&T. We went to all over the state, just visiting HBCUs every summer for 3 days. And it was the highlight of my year. He took us on trips, exposed us to different places and different cultures. And, I think now I look at my son here who doesn't have that just yet, that involvement, but I think about how it changed my life, how it affected me. Even as an adult, I think back, to those trips and to spending time with my peers. And I had a tape stolen from me once on one of those trips, and it made me so mad, but the guy was so big, couldn't do anything about it, so kind of thinking about bullying and thinking about things like that really shaped who I am today, right? I had football coaches and basketball coaches who, my mom was a single mom. She had three children, worked, and a lot of times I had to babysit. So I really was on my own. I had to find a way to get to practice, and my coaches would offer to pick me up and take me home. Super thankful for those people. Had a couple teachers. I had one teacher, one principal who, we're not going to get into the story. Let's just say she was one of those people that I rebelled against, but she was really trying to help me out. And, we bumped heads. I didn't know it at the time. I'm super thankful. I had an English teacher once. We really bumped heads to the point like my mom and my grandma had to go over to the school and I didn't know what was going to happen. And I had a best friend, and this teacher and my best friend were really close. And when my best friend got married, back in, I don't know, early teenage 2000s, 2006, 7, somewhere around there, that teacher was there. And I made it a point to take a moment to pull him to the side and be like, hey, man, I'm sorry. I didn't know what you were doing, but now I know you really saw potential in me as a young Black man and really wanted me to stay away from the people I was hanging around with, keep my mind right. But I didn't see it that way at the time, but now I know, and I appreciate you. And so I think, just for the record, I think it's very important. All those people I tried as an adult to circle back around to and say thank you, because, I didn't see it that way as a teenager. That's how I know now when these kids act out towards me, I'm not the problem. I get it. I understand. I've been there. I'm just trying to help you out along the way. You'll figure it out, hopefully with minimal mistakes and risks. But, so yeah, I had a few mentors along the way. Mr. Graves is probably the most influential, but I had a couple coaches and some teachers. And, another thing, it's funny now how it shifted, how, mashallah, you said, like, now I'm that guy, now I'm the guy that kids come to, and I see the OGs out there, and they're like, Trav, like, I'm so proud of you, man. Thank you for what you're doing out here. I appreciate you. You know, can my kid get in your program? And I'm like, yeah, man, of course. You know what you did for me? Of course. So it's a wonderful feeling. It's a almost a full circle. I haven't completed my circle yet. I still got some ways to go, but it does make me feel good to be in a position to offer hand ups and help people come up the way that people help me come up.
That is so awesome. And I'm smiling because I was trying to see, well, I thought I would have the book right in front of me. It's worth quoting this book. But in the same book about community and spirituality and this African indigenous village, that mentors usually get on the mentee's nerves. And you would think that a mentor relationship would be real smooth, and most often it is not. And you know, the writer so eloquently like wrote about like there's like wisdom in that. And I can't remember it exactly, but I will add this is that most times the people in your life that especially when you're young, who you buck up against, there's like that's that pressure, right? Remember when I talked about the diamond, you know, even when it's very irritating, there's something extremely valuable that you can learn about yourself or grow into. And it doesn't mean, you know, I'll just say this, sometimes our most painful relationships from a spiritual lens are people that are teaching you something very hard, but very valuable and something very beautiful about who you really are. You know, I'll share, you know, I had a father who struggled with the drug problem. And, you know, you think, oh, well, what did he teach you? Well, obvious, you know, he taught me not to abuse drugs, right? But underneath that, he just taught me, you know, how to love myself, to not have to need to be validated by any, you know, by just anyone. He taught me discernment. Like he taught me so much in his imperfect perfection. And it's just like a whole nother lens and a whole nother way of looking at the world when we apply a more sagacious, a more spiritual perspective on like who people really are and what's really happening to you. So I appreciate hearing your story, Travis, about that.
Yeah, I think part of why, you know, that contention happens is because those people are, like you said, more often than not, they see it in you and they're challenging you to bring it out. And you know, as a rebellious teenager, is, you know, you don't want to be challenged. You know, you know everything, and you know, I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna do it the way I know to do it. But there's a lot of wisdom in relenting and allowing yourself to be guided sometimes.
Mhm.
So yeah, as long as it's guiding you in a positive direction and not in into the wrong place. But a good mentor would not do that.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Travis. Did you want to talk about reflections on running for office and what that was like before we wrap up, and share with us maybe some lessons you learned about putting yourself out there and fearlessly saying, hey, I want to be a county commissioner and vote for me and all that?
Yeah, sure. I think probably the most important thing, the most important lesson that I learned is to have a thick skin. You know, it was in order to be vulnerable, you have to be comfortable enough with yourself to be vulnerable, but also strong enough to stand in your own truth. And I learned, let me back up for a moment. When I took over at FERC, I'm trying to say this without coming off the wrong way. My work speaks for itself, right? And so when I assumed the position at FERC, I turned it down twice before I accepted it because I didn't want the drama. I didn't want to deal with it. It was too messy. Ultimately, along with some financial gains, I agreed to take it on. And one of the biggest factors in that decision was the fact that people knew me. I was like, I'm well known. I've been doing good work. The work speaks for itself. I'm trustworthy. You know me. I soon found out that didn't work that way. I applied for several collaborative grants. And when I went to ask for partners, everybody told me the same thing. Travis, I like you. I rocks with you. But ... And that hurt. That hurt a lot. And so I think that was probably the start of developing the thick skin is, okay, you know what? I don't think it's personal. I think it's more a liability issue. These other organizations don't want the liability of having this messy organization involved or at the lead on these projects. And so that was kind of my first lesson. So fast forward to campaigning, it was very similar to that. I felt that I was well known. I felt that I was accomplished enough. I felt that I was trustworthy enough. And for the most part, all those things were true. I got a lot of support. Unfortunately, I also felt like it was politics, and I'm not a politician. I've dabbled a little bit, but I wasn't expecting of some of the things that happened. I expected I like to be transparent. I like to be truthful. I like people to know what they're dealing with when they get involved, whether it's professionally or however the relationship is defined. And I'm loyal sometimes to a fault. Politics is not like that, at least in my experience. It wasn't like that. And it was very difficult for me to navigate that at first. But again, just kind of staying true to myself, doing what I knew to do and putting myself out there allowed me to be comfortable with it. You know, like you can support whoever you want to. It doesn't, this is not gonna stop me from doing my work. It's not going to limit me or hinder me in any way whatsoever, because there are other rewards. And at the end of the race on May 17th, even before May 17th, but definitely on May 17th, I didn't feel like I lost. I felt like I got outvoted. I felt like my rewards were more intrinsic. I felt like what I gained from it was worth so much more than winning the seat. This was a true case of it's not about the end result, but about the journey. And that journey was very intense for a very short time. It was 3.5, maybe 4 months. But I gained a lot of skills. I met a lot of people. I learned about time management. And I learned about my capacity. I learned more about myself in 3 or 4 months, I think, than I had in a long time. It was transformational. So, you know, overall, it was an experience. I don't think it was good or bad. It was just an experience. You know, I learned a lot. It had its ups and downs, but here I am feeling very accomplished. You know, I did have to be fearless in the sense that I put myself out there. And trust me, there was no rest. There was no rest. Like if you go to the grocery store, you have to be presentable. I couldn't go out in my PJs, you know, with my do-rag or my scarf on. You know, I always had to be presentable. I always had to think about what I'm wearing. I always had to be thinking about, you know, like my face. I have a beard and sometimes it gets bushy, you know, and I don't get time to go to the barbershop all the time, you know, but those things matter when people see you out there and they see you in the grocery store, you're picking up a pack of hamburger, they want to come and talk to you about the campaign. And I'm like, hey, my office hours are 9 to 5. But there are no office hours. And so it was constant, you know, just always being on point and on 10 toes. And I'm thankful I did it. I am. But if you ask me right now, today, what my future plans as a politician are, I would tell you they're non-existent. You know, there may be some opportunities that present themselves in the future, but for now, I feel like my work is more powerful done with the people versus doing it for the people. I like it here. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and we are so excited to like have the opportunity to develop a relationship with you and work with you and see what can come from this collaboration. So thank you so much, Travis, for sharing and being on the podcast and being in our community. So thank you so much.
I also had a question. I think it's important when talking about you know, being a mentor. You know, I've been learning myself like different effective ways of teaching youth. and how to be a mentor to youth. And I have a junior youth group that I'm tutoring right now. And, you know, one of the things is not to act as though you are in a higher position than they are, but like it's a learning process as though you are learning together, not where you feel like you are above them. And I was wondering, since you took on mentorship, how do you, I guess, effectively reach youth? Or what do you do, or what did you learn in order to be a good mentor?
I for me, the first thing is treating each person as an individual and approaching it as case by case. You know, there's no blanket approach. I think youth, specifically youth, even more so than adults, have their own specific and very unique needs. I think, first of all, letting them know that you're a safe person, that they can trust you. I think, secondly, being truthful and being honest and being transparent with them. I think accountability is super important. Accountability and respect. And those are things that may be seen as challenging at times, holding youth accountable. It's very delicate and it could be difficult. But I think if done correctly, it builds the relationship up even more strongly. And it might not happen right away. You might not get that immediately. That might come years later. I've done 3 workforce development projects with youth. The second one that I did, I had this young man. He was, and this is not meant to be derogatory at all. He was very special. He was different. He was kind of bigger in body stature. His gender preference was different than his male counterparts, and he had a learning disability. And most people didn't want to deal with him. They would just kind of pass. They would do their job, you know, the minimum that it took to kind of interact with him, but would just pass him on. And I watched it happen, and I say, hey, listen, man, you know, you're special. You got some gifts. We just need to take some time to find out what they are and bring them out. That's why I worked with him one-on-one for a couple of years, helping him identify his special talents. And it was not easy. There were times that he was partying. He had bought a car, and he had crashed his car and totaled it, and, you know, went and got a job against my advice to go, you know, focus on school. And so it was just this whole challenging aspect of the relationship. But I'll tell you, that kid, that young man, that young person, years later wrote me a letter. And this was one of the most powerful things that's ever happened to me in my life. I'll tell you that. He wrote me a letter, and in his letter, he told me thank you. It was a long letter. I won't go into detail about everything, but basically he was saying, like, nobody had ever taken the time to sit down with me and mentor me and guide me and nurture me in the way that you did. And I just want to tell you thank you. And I still have connections with that young person, and I see what they're doing, and it's amazing work. I'm talking like medical. I can't even pronounce the title, but something in the medical field. Went, you know, flunked out of school, went back to school, graduated with honors, and then went further and is now very accomplished. I have a couple of those stories. And so I said all that just to say that, you know, being that person, whatever that means for the young person, being that person for them can add a weight to you, but it can be very, very powerful. So treat everybody, you know, with respect, and as an individual, help identify their unique needs, and hold them accountable. I think that'll be a good start.
That is some perfect advice. That is some perfect advice, and really appreciate you just stating that. And what would the world look like if we all led with that? You know, if we really knew that every single person has a gift to bring for the betterment of our world and the betterment of our community and for the betterment of themselves. And what would that look like if we nourished instead of just extract from people, but we nourish people? And and care enough to hold them accountable to the highest, grandest vision of themselves, what would our world look like then? So I'm just so happy. Thank you so much, Travis. This was awesome. We get to work with you. Yay! I keep saying, I heard it somewhere on one of these sportscaster shows that my husband watches, but someone said, I have a get-to job, not a got-to job. And, that's how I feel about the work that we're doing. I have a get-to job. I love the work. So this was awesome. And this was our amazing interview with Travis Patterson of Seeds, who will become an arm of WEBB Squared and for workforce development, working with youth here in rural Chatham County. And we're just excited. This was definitely a conversation that I will remember. And I hope everyone listening enjoyed it. And anything else, any parting words before we sign off?
I just want to thank everybody who came out for our pop-up grand opening web boutique. We had a great time for several hours, just sitting outside in the sun and just greeting and meeting everybody and talking about our work, and just, it was just wonderful. So thanks everybody who came out. And I think this is a wrap. Mashallah, you want to take us home?
And as always, the revolution begins with dialogue.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
This has been a joint podcast of WEBB Squared and Afro Future Productions. For those of you interested in learning more about our work at WEBB Squared, you can find out more at webbsquared.org. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. This is our conscious conversation. We hope you will subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. Join the Remedy Membership Forum on Patreon to join us monthly for our members-only discussion. That's it for today. Until next week, thanks for listening. What's underneath the situation you don't realize? So let's examine with a critical eye. Put on your glasses and let it magnify the truth that lies hidden under all those lies. Cause everybody has nobility, and if you look beyond what your eyes can see, you'll see they're just like you and me, and now we're giving you the remedy. The remedy.